Hello there. What you're about to watch is a snippet from a stream where I'm presenting a Draco Malfoy control deck. This is within the context of the Harry Potter TCG classic format, but with some of my own house rule changes. If you want to see the full deck list, you can find it down in the description. There you can also find details about the house format and a link to the full stream where this was presented. And I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching. So with that being said, let's jump right into the first deck of today. This one is called Draco Control. This is a very straightforward and simple deck. It may not be one of the best decks, but it's an interesting concept, and I'll try to explain why. So this one plays Draco Malfoy as the starting character, and Draco Malfoy lets you use an action and discard a card from your hand to look at your opponent's hand and discard a card from their hand. And what we are trying to use that for in this deck is to take Lesson Destruction to the next level, where if we're up against the so-called normal deck, where the bottleneck early on is often drawing enough lessons to start playing your cards, then we can use Draco Malfoy to discard their lessons before they get a chance to play them. And if we are up against a character deck, we can discard important cards like Ginny and Seamus and the Fat Lady. So basically, we are discarding the cards that are the most important to whatever deck we're playing against. And this works because whatever that is, you of course can't include infinite copies of those cards or you won't do it. So if you discard, let's say, the Ginny that's in your opponent's starting hand, in order to draw the next one, they have to draw quite a bit of cards, probably. Same with lessons. Let's say your opponent is playing 20 lesson cards, you discarded 2 of their lessons. Now, since every third card in their deck roughly is a lesson, that means that they need to draw roughly 6 cards to get the next lesson. And so even though we're spending a card and an action, they might be spending more actions to regain what we are discarding. And that's sort of the logic that we're going for here. The rest of the deck is very similar to the McGonagall control deck that's been on the channel, where we are trying to destroy the lessons that they actually played. So we are playing a lot of lesson destruction cards in the deck. And what we can get away with in this deck is we can play some really niche lesson destruction cards. Because since Draco forces us, or not doesn't force us, but when we use Draco, we are discarding cards anyway. So that means we are okay with playing some more situational cards, because if we're playing a matchup where we can't use those cards, then we can discard those. So here we can play cards that only discard specific types of lesson cards. So we are playing the 5 different cards that require 2 power and destroy a particular kind of lesson. So in this case, we are playing a restricted section that lets us discard a Transfiguration lesson, Epoximise that lets us discard a Charms lesson, Cauldron to Sieve that lets us discard a Potions lesson, Avifors that lets us discard a Care of Magical Creatures lesson, and Cancelled Practice that lets us discard a Quidditch lesson. So again, if we can't use these in a matchup, we discard them with Draco's ability. The reason they're good is because we can start playing them so early. So the earlier you can start discarding your opponent's lessons, the bigger the chances are that they don't get to play a card as early as they want to. So yeah, so we're playing 4 copies of each of those. And the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward, just like the McGonagall deck. We're trying to slow our opponent down by destroying their lessons, and then we try to finish them off with creatures. But before we get to the creatures, we are playing 2 spells that just make a lot of sense in this kind of deck. So we're deciding to cap this deck at 4 power, because any lessons we draw beyond 4 power, we can just always discard them with Draco. So we don't really feel the need to play more lesson cards and get to a higher power count. We can use those lesson cards to keep discarding cards from our opponent's hand. And one thing to mention about that is early in the game, we disrupt our opponent's setup with Draco. And later on in the game, we are disrupting their win cons. So first we slow them down, and once we have slowed them down sufficiently, or we can't really stop them anymore, then we try to discard the cards that they use to finish the game. So then we can use Draco to maybe disrupt some combo that will finish us off, or whatever other useful card they might have. So back to Dobbys Disappearance. This one I've shown before on the channel. It's just a no-brainer pick, especially for this kind of deck. requires 4 power, lets us return one of our opponent's cards to their hand, and we get an extra action this turn. So essentially, we're trading a card in our hand to set them back 1 action, or even more if we're getting a character back into their hand. And then we have picking on Neville, where we can choose one of their cards, and then they have to discard it if they don't discard 2 other cards that they have in play. So this can also be used to destroy lessons, but it's more versatile, can destroy other stuff as well. And the rest of the deck is just creatures that, while our opponent is struggling to do their setup, hopefully we can finish them off with creatures. So we're playing Black Bat, which is the best 4-cost creature that deals damage. So it deals 2 when we play it, and 2 each turn as well. The other 2 are worse versions, but it's the best we can get for 4 power, which is what we're aiming for. So they do the same thing, Ravenclaw Eagle and Boa Constrictor, each requiring 4 power, and they have 2 health as well. And then of course we're playing some lessons so that we can play our cards. So 9 Care of Magical Creatures and 11 Transfiguration cards. Of course we're playing more Transfiguration cards because we are playing cards that we need to play early that require Transfiguration power. So it's quite important that we get a Transfiguration lesson early on. So we're playing a few more to increase the odds of playing the Transfiguration lessons.